Impeachment hearings go public this week as the battle over witnesses is giving us a glimpse of what to expect in the days to come. 3 administration officials set to testify before Congress in live televised public hearings, 2 on Wednesday and 1 on Friday. The Republicans have their own wish list of interviewees demanding to hear from Hunter Biden and the anonymous whistleblower whose complaint launched the impeachment inquiry. House Intel Chairman Adam Schiff, however, is making it clear some witnesses are a no-go. He says hearing from the whistleblower would be, quote, redundant and unnecessary. The White House sounding off on that.
There are public hearings starting this week, but clearly they're not going to be public because we don't get to have anybody from our side out there to tell our side of the story.
Meanwhile, Democrats are pushing back on that list. They say having Hunter Biden testify is unrelated.
We want to stay focused on the Ukraine call, and having Hunter Biden come in is unrelated to the Ukraine call, and so that becomes irrelevant.
I don't think he's an appropriate witness, and not only that, but I think that the reason they're calling for these witnesses, these new witnesses, is because they want to make a spectacle and a circus out of this entire proceeding.
The President of the United States demanding, extorting a vulnerable country to do his political bidding, to go after his opponent, has nothing to do with Joe Biden executing the foreign policy of the United States.
And some in the media are offering Democrats advice on how they should handle the hearings.
If this can be dramatized so that our diplomats struggling against the president feel like soldiers in a battlefield and their commander abandoned them, and if that gets through, I think that changes the stakes.
They wanted Marie Yovanovitch there because I'm told she cried in her testimony, and they essentially want someone who's going to be emotional to say, I was a victim of the president trying to do this for his own political game.
And just before this show started, so we haven't had a chance to read all of it, there was another batch of testimony released. This is a transcript from Laura Cooper. Laura Cooper worked at the Department of Defense, and one of her jobs was to get the aid to Ukraine. So that's out there. You can look it up. We will probably have it on our website, but we haven't read the whole thing because it was probably riveting, but we were talking about other things in the green room.
Yes, and I don't care about any more transcripts. I happen to agree that they're right. Almost all of this stuff is redundant and unnecessary. But I do like Meet the Press. They prove what we've always known, that this is a 2-team effort. You have the media and the Democrats. One is the team, the other one's the cheerleaders. Sometimes they switch roles. Talking about the female ambassador, that it's a really positive thing that she cried, and that she's cried before, and that possibly she could cry again, and that is really
that
could help them. I mean, you have to think about how gross that is.
Yeah.
That they're hoping she cries in order to manipulate the viewers because they know this is thin gruel. They don't have any facts. It's all opinions. It's an orgy of opinion. If a producer said to me before the 5 and said, you know, if you get Dana or Emily to cry on the 5, it's going to be great TV, that person would be fired.
And but if we got you to cry,
Juan has made me cry a number of times, but I usually run to the bathroom in the breaks and I cry into my sweater. But I go back to this dumb question that I had on Friday, which was, if there was a prosecutor who vows to charge you with a crime before it's committed, how could that prosecutor be near you during an inquiry? Oh, you look at Schiff and the Dems; they've all been vowing to impeach for 3 years. Aren't they biased? They created this whole thing. They reverse engineer it. Why should we be allowed to listen to them? Why should we want to?
It's an interesting thing, Jesse, just reading about the Founding Fathers and how they thought about impeachment. They put it in the congressional branch, not the judicial branch, because impeachment is more of a political decision, and there's not a real clear definition of high crimes and misdemeanors. I mean, you could sort of try to come up with it and say we could all agree on this, but there's not agreement on it at all.
I agree with your point, Dana, that the Founding Fathers would not have wanted the president to be impeached in this instance. Very, very well articulated.
Yes, I heard it too. Oh, okay. I think all of America heard it.
I'm going to cry.
And
it's working.
And I do. This whole scandal feels microwave to me. It feels like Russia was hot, and this just feels like a bunch of leftovers. I like the witness list, though. It's a good list. They're not going to be able to bring any of these guys here. Hunter Biden, I love how Hunter Biden is irrelevant. Hunter Biden is at the center of this whole Venn diagram.
Right.
You take Hunter Biden out of here, and there is no story. So, of course, they'll rig it, and they won't let him testify. Alexandra Chalupa will testify if Republicans get their way. I love her name. It reminds me of Taco Bell. She was the DNC woman who went to Ukraine and got dirt on Manafort and Trump and gave it to Hillary. Okay, seems relevant to this whole thing. And then the whistleblower they want to testify, I think he should testify because right now he's trying to steal 60 million people's votes in the dark, and he's already worked with Brennan and Biden. We know that whole thing. It's a scam. Obama prosecuted more whistleblowers in his administration than all other U.S. presidential administrations in history combined. You breathed on a whistle, and he charged you with espionage. That's how bad it was. Now, the facts of the timeline here are very interesting, all right? He has, the president, until September 30th to give this aid to Ukraine. He gets it out on September 11th, 3 weeks before the deadline. So we give our ally aid, and Joe Biden is not investigated. Remember that. They get the aid, and we get nothing in return. The Democrats want that to be an impeachable offense. Good luck with that.
Well, that is interesting, though, the timeline of like when the aid then was released, because we know that the White House was informed there was a whistleblower complaint. We know that Congress was starting to get antsy about it. And so basically they were like, excuse us, White House, knock, knock. There's a problem here. Is there a problem? And then the aid gets released, and everyone's like, there's no harm, no foul.
Well, I mean, that's obviously done under pressure, but the crime had already been committed. The crime was essentially trying to force a government to give you dirt on your political opponent by withholding the money because the money had been held up to that point. And the question was, why was it being held up? And that's what led to the knocking that you described, Dana.
But one, there's no crime.
There is a crime.
No, there is no crime.
Well, there is a crime.
You haven't stated one.
The crime is clearly that you are using U.S. money as president to try to get dirt from a foreign government.
Not in there. It's not in there. No one's got dirt.
He
was searching corruption.
But here's the thing. I think that, first of all, to your point, Greg, the phone call took place in June. June 25th, I think, is the exact date. So it wasn't that people were trying to impeach him before that on this call. That call started in June. And
the impeachment started before he was even became president.
No, you're talking about just kind of people didn't like him. But I'm saying this is a specific, real incident. And with regard to the witnesses, I mean, clearly elections have consequences. And Democrats control the House of Representatives. They get to decide who's called. And this was the case with Benghazi, as I recall. So, I mean, it's the same thing when Republicans had control. So, to my mind, you can even forget the witnesses because the president, over the weekend, he said to Republicans, nothing was wrong. This was a perfect call. Don't say that, oh, yeah, there might be some problems with extortion and bribery, but we shouldn't impeach the president. Just say there was nothing wrong. Now, you talk about outrageous. That's the president.
You didn't say anything about extortion or bribery.
Let me ask Emily. So the Republicans are asking for their witnesses. Adam Schiff gets to say yay or nay.
Right.
If you're in a court, this is not a court of law, right? This is Congress. But what is the best tactic if you are Republicans to try to get those witnesses to testify?
I think at this point, their best option is the court of public opinion. And it's interesting, right now, what you guys just played out is exactly what we should be noting, which is that up until this week, the trigger words were quid pro quo. And all of a sudden now, the words extortion and bribery are being thrown around.
That's the new collusion.
Did you see the New York Times had 33 writers saying, don't call it quid pro quo anymore, call it what it really is?
Exactly.
Oh, well, good. I'm glad. You mean I'm ahead of the curve?
I don't know. I read the New York Times. Apparently, I was ahead.
And I just have to say that what we're also seeing play out is exactly that questionable part that when the process rules were voted on, that the Democrats have that ability to deny the production of witnesses, to deny lines of questioning. And don't forget, if they feel the president is being uncooperative in any of those 6 investigations, then they can levy those appropriate remedies, which includes denying requests. Final point for a second, that again, for the 9th time this year, the Dow Jones closed at an all-time high. So while all of this is going on, the American public, the consumer public, is still having a ball.